The iPod Classic is a portable media player marketed by Apple Incorporated. The current generation has the largest storage size of any current iPod offerings, with 160 GB of storage. To date, there have been 6 generations of the iPod Classic, as well as a spin-off that was later reintegrated into the main iPod line. All generations use a 1.8-inch hard drive for storage. The Classic suffix was formally introduced with the rollout of the 6th generation iPod on September 5, 2007. Prior to this, all iPod Classic models were simply referred to as iPods. It is available in silver or black, replacing the signature iPod white. History: First generation. Apple introduced the first generation iPod Classic on October 23, 2001, with the slogan 1000 songs in your pocket. The first iPod had a black and white LCD screen and featured a 5 GB hard drive capable of storing 1000 songs encoded using MP3 and was priced at $399. Among the iPod's innovations were its small size, achieved using a 1.8 inches hard drive, whereas its competitors were using 2.5 hard drives at the time, and its easy-to-use navigation, which was controlled using a mechanical scroll wheel, a center select button, and 4 auxiliary buttons around the wheel. The iPod had a rated battery life of 10 hours. On March 20, 2002, Apple introduced a 10 GB model of the first generation iPod for $499. V-card compatibility was added, as well, allowing iPods to display business card information synced from a Mac. Second generation. The second generation of the iPod Classic was introduced on July 17, 2002. Using the same body style as the first generation, the hold switch was redesigned, a cover was added to the FireWire port, and the mechanical wheel was replaced with a touch-sensitive wheel. The front plate also had rounded corners and edges. The second generation class was available in 10 GB for $399 and 20 GB for $499. The first generation 5 GB iPod was carried over, but its price was reduced to $299. Notably, the second generation iPods and the updated first generation iPod were now Windows compatible. These versions came with a 4-pin to 6-pin FireWire adapter and were bundled with Music Match Jukebox. At that time iTunes was Mac-only and unavailable for Windows. In December 2002, Apple unveiled its first limited edition iPods, with either Madonna unregistered trademark S, Tony Hawk unregistered trademark S, or Becker unregistered trademark S signature or No Doubt's band logo engraved on the back for an extra $50. Third generation. On April 29, 2003, Apple announced a completely redesigned third-generation iPod Classic. Thinner than the previous models, the third-generation models replaced the FireWire port with a new dock connector and introduced the touch wheel, a completely non-mechanical interface with the 4 auxiliary buttons located in a row between the screen and the touch wheel. The front plate had rounded edges, and the rear casing was slightly rounded as well. A new wired remote connector was introduced. Whereas first and second generation iPods had an auxiliary ring around the headphone port for the remote, the third generation iPods had a 4-pin jack adjacent to the headphone port. A 10 GB model was sold for $299, a 15 GB model for $399, and a 30 GB model for $499. All iPods were now compatible with Mac and Windows out of the box, was simply requiring Windows users to reformat the iPod before use on the PC, and both iTunes and Music Match were bundled with all iPods. The battery life was reduced to 8 hours, partially due to the use of a lithium-ion battery as opposed to a lithium polymer battery. The 15 GB model was replaced by a 20 GB model, and the 30 GB model was upgraded to 40 GB on September 8, 2003. The Windows-based Music Match software was made obsolete and replaced by iTunes 4.1, the first version available for Microsoft Windows, 4th generation. Announced on July 19, 2004. The 4th generation iPod replaced the touch wheel from the 3rd generation iPod with the click wheel from the iPod Mini, putting the 4 auxiliary buttons underneath a touch-sensitive scroll wheel. The casing was also slightly slimmer. Pricing was reduced and the lineup was simplified, as the 20GB model was sold for $299 and the 40GB model for $399. Notably, Apple began reducing pack-in accessories starting with the 4th generation. While a dock, carrying case, and wired remote were previously included with higher-end iPods, the higher-level 40GB iPod only came with a dock, earphones and an interchangeable proprietary cable capable of USB and FireWire interface. In addition to using the iPod mini's click wheel, the 4th generation iPod used the more energy-efficient components of the Mini, allowing the 4th generation iPod to over 12 hours of battery life while using the same battery as its predecessor. A special U2 edition was announced on October 26, 2004, to cross-market U2's How to Dismantle an Atomic Bomb album. The plastic front piece of the U2 edition iPod was black and the scroll wheel was red, to coincide with the color scheme of the U2 album. With 20GB and the signatures of all 4 members of U2, the special edition iPod was priced at $349 and also included a $50 coupon for a $149 collection of U2's entire back catalog. U2 iPod customers also received 30 minutes of exclusive U2 video downloadable from the iTunes as a registered trademark music store. A special Harry Potter edition was announced on September 7, 2005. It was released in conjunction with the Harry Potter audiobooks in iTunes. It had a Hogwarts logo engraved on the back, and all 6 Harry Potter audiobooks which were available at the time preloaded. iPod Photo. At the same time that the U2 iPod was announced, Apple also unveiled the iPod Photo. Positioned as a premium version of the standard 4th generation iPod, the iPod Photo featured a 220x176-pixel LCD capable of displaying up to 65,536 colors. The Photo supported JPEG, BMP, GIF, TIFF, and PNG graphic file formats, and could be attached to a television or other external display for slideshows. The battery was rated for 15 hours for music playback and 5 hours for slideshows with music. The Photo was available in a 40GB version for $499 and a 60GB version for $599. On February 23, 2005, both 40GB models were replaced with a slimmer and lower-priced 30GB Photo model, leaving only a 20GB iPod regular left. The price for the 60GB model was dropped to $449, and accessory pack-ins were reduced, making the dock, FireWire cable, and television cable extra cost options. iPod with color display. On June 28, 2005, the iPod Photo was merged into the monochrome iPod line. The 30GB model was dropped, and the 20GB monochrome iPod received a color screen. The price for the 60GB model was also dropped to $399. 5th generation. The 5th generation iPod was introduced on October 12, 2005, shortly after the introduction of the iPod Nano. The 5th generation iPod featured a 2.5 inches 320x240 QVGA screen and a smaller click wheel. It was the first iPod to be able to play videos. The 5th generation iPod is the first iPod to be available in an alternative color scheme in a non-special edition form, as a black option was added alongside signature iPod White, and marked the second full redesign of the iPod's aesthetic with its rearranged proportions, its return to a fully flat front plate, and its more rounded rear casing. The 4-pin remote port was removed as well, causing backwards compatibility issues with certain accessories. A 30GB model was offered for $299 and a 60GB model was offered for $399. The 5th generation iPod was also offered in the U2 Special Edition for $349 with 30GB. The 5th generation iPod was the last model to have a plastic face. The 5th generation iPod plays video in MP4 and H.264 formats. Video such as TV shows, podcasts, music videos, and movies may be purchased from online stores such as the iTunes Store, or downloaded from Google Video and other sources, then imported to the iPod via iTunes software. Videos or photo slideshows may be played from the fifth-generation iPod on a television set, projector or monitor with the use of the Apple iPod AV cable or via a dock using an S-video cable. It is also possible to do this using some camcorder cables with an RCA connection at one end and a 3-banded 1/8-inch AV plug at the other, although the red and yellow plugs must be swapped around in order to achieve the correct signal. The fifth-generation iPod was updated on September 12, 2006. This update included a brighter screen, longer video playback time, newly designed earphones and a search feature. An iTunes installation CD was also no longer bundled, requiring users to download iTunes from Apple's website. The 60GB model was replaced with an 80GB model, and prices were cut by $50 for both the 30GB and the 80GB models. Gapless playback and support for iPod games was enabled on all fifth-generation iPods through a firmware update released at the same time. Sixth generation. During a special iPod-centric event on September 5, 2007, Steve Jobs introduced the sixth-generation iPod and the Suffix Classic. Featuring slightly thinner bodies, the sixth-generation iPod also sported dramatically improved battery life, claiming up to 36 hours of music playback and 6 hours of video playback. The iPod Classic has a 2.5 inches backlit display at a resolution of 320x240. The front plate of the iPod is now made of anodized aluminum instead of polycarbonate plastic, and signature iPod white has been replaced by silver. This marks the first time white is not available as a color option for an iPod. The sixth-generation iPod also introduced a completely overhauled user interface, incorporating more graphics and cover flow. The iPod Classic was offered in an 80GB model for MSRP $249 and a 160GB model for MSRP $349. The U2 Special Edition has been released. Sixth generation revisions 1 and 2. During the Let's Rock Apple event on September 9, 2008, the 80GB and the thicker 160GB model were discontinued in favor of a thin 120GB version retailing for $249. It introduced Genius and audio recording capabilities which are also available in other iPod models released at similar times. No firmware update provides either feature to the first-generation iPods. Prior to the It's Only Rock and Roll event on September 9, 2009, the price of the 120GB version was dropped to $229. During the event, Apple reintroduced the sixth-generation 160GB only model with the same slim profile as the 120GB version, retailing at $249. The 120GB model has now been dropped and the sixth-generation 160GB is the only remaining iPod Classic. According to speculation by Wired magazine, the current sixth generation is, as of 2014, expected to be the final form of the iPod Classic that helped Apple achieve its success in the 2000s. The Apple Worldwide Developers Conference in 2013 revealed no new iPod Classic and Apple is not expected to produce another one. The iPod Classic, however, still remains in production. The second revision of the sixth-generation iPod Classic is commonly called the seventh generation by online retailers. Production of the iPod Classic continues in low volumes as a stopgap measure to clear out abundant inventory of unused standalone parts, in which having some buyers has helped to ensure a good profit margin since supply somewhat exceeds demand for the iPod Classic. Technical information, user interface. iPods with color displays use anti-aliased graphics and text, with sliding animations. All iPods have 5 buttons and the later generations have the buttons integrated into the click VLA design which gives an uncluttered, minimalist interface, though the circuitry contains multiple momentary button switches. The buttons are, menu to traverse backwards through the menus, toggle the backlight on older iPods, and jump to the main menu on newer iPods, center, to select a menu item, play/pause. This doubles as an off switch when held, skip forward/fast forward, skip backward/fast reverse, operating system and firmware. The iPod's operating system is stored on its dedicated storage medium. An additional NOR flash ROM chip contains a bootloader program that tells the device to load its OS from the storage medium. Each iPod also has 32 MB of RAM, although the 60 and 80 GB 5th generation, and the 6th generation models have 64 MB. A portion of the RAM is used to hold the iPod OS loaded from firmware, but the majority of it serves to cache songs from the storage medium. For example, an iPod could spin its hard disk up once and copy approximately 30 MB of upcoming songs into RAM, thus saving power by not requiring the drive to spin up for each song. Custom firmware has also been developed, such as Rockbox and iPod Linux, which offer open-source alternatives to the standard firmware and operating system. Additional features: in March 2002, Apple added limited PDA-like functionality. Text files can be displayed, while contacts and schedules can be viewed and synchronized with the host computer. Some built-in games are available, including Brick, Parachute, Solitaire, and Music Quiz. A firmware update released in September 2006 brought some extra features to 5th generation iPods, including adjustable screen brightness, gapless playback, and downloadable games. However, as of September 30, 2011, these games are no longer available on the iTunes Store. Models, timeline of full-size iPod models. References. External links. Media related to iPod Classic at Wikimedia Commons, official website, http://support.apple.com iPod Classic, I1/4 https, Wikipedia.org user, Lexinsa95/Sandbox2, complete disassembly of a first-generation iPod.